please bear with us. Yeah, we are now live on YouTube. I can see that. And we'll be going live in another minute or so.
Right.
So I can see a beautiful picture behind you, Arvind.
Yes, that's our university. That's Shoolini for you. That's very strategic view. Saideep has been to our university.
Yes, of course.
Many times.
Yes.
Good. It's 11:30 and good morning, everyone. If you allow me, Saideep and Arvind, can I start?
Yes, please.
Wonderful. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 34th episode of the Yogananda Guru Series, powered by Shoolini University. Every day we come to you with amazing speakers, with new inspiring thoughts. And who could be better than today? Professor Saideep Rathnam. I've known Saideep for a very long time now, I think 4 to 5 years or more. And I can tell everyone that Saideep is extremely inspirational, extremely insightful. And he brings in tremendous amount of expertise and I would say knowledge from the manufacturing industry, the automotive industry, and other places that he's worked. He is currently working at IIM Bangalore after his retirement in senior positions from the industry. The last was with Anand Group, as I remember. Saideep also is the grandson, I think, of the very famous engineer. So I won't disclose the name right now. I'm going to let Arvind take us through the introduction. But welcome once again, everyone. Welcome, Saideep. We're truly looking forward to hearing to you and really look forward to this wonderful talk. The format for everyone is going to be a minute of discussion with Arvind and Saideep, where Arvind will introduce Saideep. We'll then have around 30-35 minutes of presentation by Saideep, and then we'll request all of you to ask questions. So please keep posting your questions on the chat bot. Arvind, over to you, and over to you, Saideep. So I am going to switch off now, and it's just going to be the two of you, and then Saideep, over to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Atul, and good morning, Saideep. Good morning to you all. Those of you who may not be fully aware of Saideep's credentials, let me give you a small brief. He graduated in engineering from Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. At that time, they were offering UG programs in engineering too. And then he went on to do his MBA from Indian Institute of Management, IMB, and talking about his educational qualifications, he did something which was quite unusual in the recent years. He got himself enrolled in a leading Dutch university for a PhD program after he had become a senior citizen, right?
Yeah.
Saideep?
Exactly.
He's just been awarded a PhD degree. So he's Dr. Saideep Rathnam from March 2020. He would have gone to Amsterdam to receive it, but for the prevailing situation. Anyway, congratulations, Saideep, once again for being a doctoral person. You have always been inspiring, and you will keep on inspiring us more. Saideep started his professional career very quickly. I would not take too much of time. In the aerospace domain, for 20 years he worked with HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, and also British Aerospace before he shifted to auto sector, joining Anand Automotive, where we became colleagues. Saideep is a certified Six Sigma Master Black Belt by Price Waterhouse and Dana Corporation in the US. He went to the United States for a 6-month program, came back as a master black belt in Six Sigma. I don't know how many master black belts are there, Saideep, in India, but I'm sure there are not too many of them.
Over 100.
Over 100, but you are one of the 100 in the country. So he's an expert in quality system management and has been driving quality initiatives like visionary leadership in manufacturing, along with JICA, which is a Japanese agency, and also CII. He's worked very closely with gurus like Dr. Jyoti Shiba. He is presently the CEO of Indo-Japanese Center of Excellence at Indian Institute of Management Bank. I met Saideep in 2003 when I joined Anand Automotive. At that point of time, he was the dean of Anand University in Parvanu. And we have had a privilege, I have had a privilege of working very, very closely with him on multiple quality management initiatives. I truly believe that Saideep is one of the best teachers I've ever come across. Saideep today is going to talk about the leadership role during the crisis situation like what we are facing now. Many of us are leaders in our own spheres, and others are aspiring to be one. So, a very, very important, pertinent topic being covered by a master. Before I hand over to Saideep, let me also share with you something about his pedigree, which Atul sort of hinted. Those of you who do not know, Saideep is the grandson of Bharat Ratna, Sir M Vishveshwaraiah. A huge legacy. And before I hand over to you now, Saideep, I have a couple of naughty questions. Do you, first one is not so naughty. Do you remember being with Sir Vishveshwaraiah playing in his lap or that time? Do you?
Yeah, I was, I think, 10 when he passed away.
Oh,
so some recollection.
Strong memories of him. You are so fortunate, Saideep.
Yes.
The second question is a little naughty. I was wondering to ask you if this legacy that you have, you're carrying it, does it challenge you all the time that people are expecting you to prove yourself and come up to their expectations? Something like what Abhishek Bachchan must be feeling, I was thinking. So
very true, very true. That's why voluntarily I never tell any people about this place.
The standards go up. Okay. So I won't take more time. Please go ahead, Saideep.
Right.
Take us through your journey and your presentation. Thank you.
Right. Thanks. Thank you.
You'll have to share the screen.
And Arvind, I would start by giving a screen of the PPT.
Okay.
So I'm sure the audience is able to see this. So I will, as Arvind introduced, the title of my presentation is Managing Through a Crisis. And as you will see on the right side, it's a leadership guide. I am aware that the audience for today's session is a wide-ranging one. That means the variance in statistical language is very high because the profile is right from a student through to a CEO. So, but as Arvind was saying, we are all leaders in some sense of the word. Either we lead teams, or we lead a family, or we lead an educational department or institute, or even a department in a business, or even the business itself. So one interesting thing about a crisis like COVID is that it has created a level playing field where everyone is struggling, whether he is a CEO or a student. But their challenges may be different, but they're all struggling to cope with this particular crisis that has engulfed us, all of us. So what I think is that this guide, which I have put together for you, may help you to navigate yourself, navigate your way through this crisis that we have. So Arvind has already told about my background, both aeronautics, HAL, auto components, industry, academia, India, UK, other places. But key point, I think, is that the second point in the center, which is the mindset transformation. I believe that if one can transform the mind, business can transform itself. So that is our key. And much of the presentation will also focus on what a leader must do in terms of the mindset aspect. So the agenda for this discussion would be 5 elements. I also recognize that we may not have time for all the 5, but I would like to give you a flavor of how to lead in a crisis. We'll spend a little more time on that. More mundane elements like cutting costs, yes. Creating virtual learning experiences, which is a mandatory requirement for companies. Restructuring our businesses, and finally, how to enable people through this change. So if nothing else, I would like to give you a model, at least, of the others. We will discuss serial number one in more detail, but a model to think through for the other 4 elements. So what does leading in a crisis actually mean? To me, I feel that this curve is very symbolic. You see on the left, sales revenue, it could be replaced by salary also on one side. So where normally you would expect that the revenues will keep going, but suddenly you see a catastrophic fall. This catastrophic fall is not only for large businesses, but also for small businesses, whether it's a business or a university. As Arvind was saying, I'm working with IIM. And IIM also is seeing a possibility of a severe cut in its revenues due to educational, especially the challenges which they are facing in education, executive education. So also you see that whether he is a CEO or a helawala or even a pensioner, they will find, because of the shrinking interest rates, you will find that the money in the pocket for them would be very much challenged. So in such a case, what would be a standard response? Standard response would be to hunker down, sit down and crouch, act fast because speed is essence. Keep cash, don't preserve all cash with you, and of course cut costs. And some similar initiatives. But a visionary response would be slightly different. Visionary response would probably look at finding new efficiencies, creating new services for customers, and streamlining the operations so that efficiencies will go up, effectiveness will go up. But the goal would remain that the business or individual must give himself or the business an edge when the demand finally does return. So this, I think, is symbolic of the whole presentation that you will go through today. This slide gives you a definition of a very interesting word called paradox. Paradox, I think most of you understand what it means, but it is really a set of contradictions. They are slightly counterintuitive, but they are contradictory as well. So against common sense. So I will pose to you some challenges or paradoxes in current scenario of COVID, post-COVID. Should one focus on performance or should just hunker down and survive and hope the worst will be over? Should you push for survival or should you just pause for growth? Should one go slower to get it right or should one speed up so that you can escape the animal which is chasing you? Should the leader be empathetic or should they be executional? See, many leaders think that being empathetic is, especially when you're firefighting, doesn't make sense because there is a fire there to be put out. But you may, if you don't really are empathetic, you may end up with no followers for you when you are really wanting a resupply of the water which you are trying to throw on the fire. So should one focus on what needs to be fixed or should you focus on what can be fixed? So this is again a dilemma or a paradox. And finally, should you compete with a competitor or should one collaborate? Because the word competitor means you are competing. So, but you need to think, or we need to think together, whether competing is in such an environment of COVID type of pandemic, is there an alternative to that? Some of you have probably read a book called The Blue Ocean Strategy. What is the other side of the blue ocean? It's a red ocean. Red ocean means there is plenty of blood in the water because each competitor is trying to cut the other down. So kill and survive the fittest. That is a jungle law of the jungle. So should one follow the law of the jungle or should one collaborate so that both can survive this pandemic? So in a way, in a nutshell, this is the type of paradox or a dilemma in the minds of the leader. To survive, you need to push, but to grow at a later date, you need to pause. To survive today, you need to be fast, but to grow tomorrow, you need to be slow. To survive today, you need to compete, but you need to collaborate if you need to grow or perform at a later date. And finally, to survive, you must fix what can be fixed, but to grow, you need to do something different. So this is the paradox or a dilemma which we need to address. So I will give you here a very interesting leadership response or possible leadership response. It is called KVI. KVI, actually, some of you, all of you have heard of concepts like KPI, key process indicators. And we people in the business area are very familiar with KPIs for all our businesses. But what is KVI? KVI, the key point here is priority. K stands for prioritization or key priorities, because resources are limited, you need to prioritize. Second on the V is define the value. And this is again understated in many contexts, because when you are fighting fire, where is the question of defining values for yourself, your organization, your department, your function? But literature shows that this is one of the key things of a visionary leader, because a visionary leader will not have time because he is under pressure, he needs to delegate to people. And people need guidelines for decision making. What are the Lakshman Rekhas which they should not cross? What should be their systems or focus? Like, for example, safety, unique value, learning and development. So whether it is the customer side interaction, whether it is a supplier side interaction, or within organizational interaction, what should be the values and which you will never compromise, even in a crisis. So this must be clearly defined by the leader. And finally, you have to create an environment for innovation and service. So if one does this, if a leader is able to create these three things, defining the key priorities, defining the values, and creating an environment for innovation and service, he would have done a great job. But there is a small element which don't forget. Even in a crisis, never lose your sense of humor. So this picture there on the right is a picture of a CEO who was struggling. I used to mentor him, and he used to have this picture at the back of his desk. And whenever he used to have these meetings with his people, this is in a way indication of what his state is. He is sinking. But the point here is that you should be able to laugh at yourself. Sense of humor is not to laugh at others, but ability to laugh at self. I think that is the key of a great leader, a visionary leader. And if you see the next slide, I'm going to take you through a leadership response in a different context, which will address these elements of paradox or dilemmas which a leader faces. To the left, you have purpose. So each one of these elements I will explain a little in detail, because this is, I feel, the key to understanding what a leader must do. Take, for example, this purpose. What does it mean? Being purposeful is to remind constantly why it is so important that we as a department, as a function, as a company must exist. See this crisis as a new way to purposefully serve our colleagues, our customers in new and meaningful value creating ways. I think that is the key. And finally, leveraging purpose as a new tool of innovation. I think great leaders first define the purpose and ensure that people are aligned to that purpose, because that will help them to create more value add to the organization and to the customers and other stakeholders. If you come back to this slide, the second element, these 4 elements in the box are the 4 actions that you need to focus as a leader. So we will come back to that word, empathy word, which we talked about earlier. Being empathetic really means acknowledging the other person's stresses, knowing that people are also struggling for personal issues, family issues, but of course there are those business issues which are paramount to you. But you have to be aware that they are doing this. And also, not just be aware, but you show that you care about them, not just the enterprise or the bottom line of the company or the department or the function that you are heading. The third element in this diagram is reflective action. Again, reflective action is a sort of a contradictory, self-contradictory. What does one reflect or does one act? So if you look at it, you have to reconcile as a leader the need for pausing and the need for action, because both pausing and action are critical for survival and growth. And a leader must never be too passive, but also not hyperactive during such times. So be calm, be collected, and finally, step back to reflect, learn, strategize. Then the pace and bias for action, in a crisis, bias for action is very high. But even then, you must be able to step back, reflect, and then act. I think that is the key, one of the three keys that we have been talking about. There are 8 elements, so we have covered 3 so far. But the 4th element, again, inspirational aspects of a leadership role, is sharing stories that reveal the enduring values and what is really important at this moment. So sharing stories not only of success, but sharing stories of where you as a leader could have done better. So failure stories show you as a more, how do you call it, human being, not just a remote leader sitting somewhere in Mount Everest. Remember that the purpose of the company or enterprise, and remember that and remind them about that so that people can be rallied around it. And finally, crisis is an opportunity as well. So we must, because people are in depression, people are in not such a great mood. So your role as a leader is really that what could be the opportunities and how one can live and serve and grow with your people and customers. I think that is the key which you as a inspiring leader can do. And the final element of this middle part is resilience. Resilience is the ability to fall and get up, keep getting up, even though you may fall again and again. So taking care of that energy, your own wellness, fitness, I think that is a very important element in the ability of a leader to be resilient. But also to encourage others to do the same. And of course, you have to demonstrate to these people. Finally, you should show your energy to take the new challenges head on, both with and create something new in the process. So this is the 5 elements we have covered, but the last 3 are critical as well. If you see the how to be confident when one is not sure, where there's a deep fog, I don't know whether I'm going in the right direction, but you have to look confident. Otherwise, there will be no followers for you. So how do you do it? But communicate, communicate, communicate. I think with clarity, with authenticity, with regularity. I think this, as a leader, one should not forget that you must have a clear vision, and you must convey that authentically. Authentically means not like people can see through if it is not coming from your heart. And regularity, you have to do that very, very frequently. Then second point here is expressing a vision of the other side. That means this is a dark cloud, all right, but what is a silver lining? What do you see as a silver lining? I think that is what you need to express and show to the people. And converting anxiety to the hum honge kamyab attitude. So I think it is this ability to convert the anxiety into positivity. I think that is again a key facet of a good leader. If you look at mindsets, and I told you that is my forte in a way, mindset transformation. So there are two elements here. One element is that be aware of your own fears, your own fixed mindsets, and eliminate it and move from that to a mentality or mindset of growth. Know also that our openness and our closedness opens or closes others. So you as a leader need to be open, need to be not closed to others and new ideas, new thoughts, new ways of doing things. Only then people will be there to, that means modeling. You have to be the model for all this. And of course, catch yourself in the fear psychosis and move towards growth mindset before acting or before behaving. We will come back to this in the last slide of my presentation very quickly. But be aware that fear, of course, you are a human as well. You will fear, you will have many fears. But the ability not to show it, ability to manage it, your own fears, I think is the key for a great visionary leader. And finally, courage. Courage is really having three key elements. Ability to make tough decisions, however unpopular, based on the purpose, which was my first point, which I had told you, with courage. Pay attention to fear-based reactive decisions. Take proactive and growth-minded mindset and therefore growth-minded decisions. Finally, inspire others with your courage, energy, positivity. I think these 8 points are in a way the key to coming back to this slide. If you want to be a change leader, these 8 points are key to responding, leadership's response to the 3 or 6 paradoxes that we discussed in the previous slide. So now if you come to, as I said, I promised that we'll go from one level to the lower level also, and again come back to a higher level. So lower level is more on cutting costs, because without cutting costs, there is probably no survival for the business. So most businesses are aware, most people are aware, cutting costs. But the proviso which I have put here is that you must cut the fat, not the muscle. So you must be ready for rebound because in a rebound, you'll be using you'll need those muscles which we talked about. So again, I promised you that I will give you a model for each of the 5 elements. So here is the model for the second element. Model is, please understand this, the structure of this. It's on the x-axis, you have the duration. On the y-axis, you have the depth. So if it is a short duration issue or a problem, say for example 2 months, or is it a long duration one, which probably some analysts say COVID will be a long duration one, 18 months maybe. So it could be anywhere between 2 months to 18 months. If the type of business that you are in, the revenue loss could be less than 10% or a deep cut in the revenue which you forecast. So depending upon these these 2 dimensions, the management will have to take, or leader must take a approach. If it is the this first quadrant, which we talk about, you don't do much. You just hunker down and let the storm blow. So ride out. But if it is a shorter duration, but a deeper cut on your revenues, then you need to do something to survive, pairing and protecting. So I will give you some leads on it. There is, as I said, all of you are aware of cutting costs. But for example, taking out traveling costs, events costs, get-together costs, all unnecessary costs, you can cut it. Similarly, timing. Oh, we will not invest today, but we will see tomorrow. A new car. Oh, we will see maybe next year. Like this, delaying decisions about personal or business aspects is also quite well known. What is slightly counterintuitive is the third element here, variable expense capturing. What it means is that typically the bonus will come down. When the sales volume shrinks, salesperson's bonus or most employees' bonus will come down. What you suppliers also will get hit. Customer may also get hit. So employees, customers, suppliers, all of them will be hit by these shrinking variable costs. Now you as a leader must think, how much of it should I keep all this saving to myself because it's a variable? I never promised them anything. But in order to ensure that suppliers, customers, and employees stay engaged with you, you need to show some nobility in your mind. So maybe you have to work out a formula, how you will share the variable expenses which you have saved because of this. So coming back to this model, if the duration is long, but revenue cut is not so deep, then wave 2 could be tackling process efficiencies, targeting headcount reductions. Again, quite standard responses. But this third point, again, supplier negotiations, focus on those ABC or high value, mid value, low value parts, then vital parts, essential parts, and desirable parts. Maybe a matrix can be made out of this, and select only a few suppliers and do targeted negotiations rather than across the board type of cutting. So this could be your wave 2. Wave 3 again could be very deep restructuring concept. Again, I don't want to go into detail about this because some of it is quite common sense. Right sizing, very important that you are ready, not cutting your muscle as well while you're cutting the flab, because you must be, the resources availability should be proportional to the expected revenue, not the current revenue. Because when you want people, right people, you will never get it back. If you, therefore, you are going to hamper your muscle as well. Protect capex, of course, all of you are aware, cash flow, cash is king in such environments. So protect cash and don't invest. And of course, outsource what is not core business to you. So these are standard, but I thought I will explain some aspects like the right sizing about the muscle aspect as well. So this is what we did. We understood that in this model, there are 3 approaches to cutting costs, either pairing and protecting, getting lean, or restructuring, depending upon where in terms of how deeply it is going to hurt you and how long it is going to hurt you. So this model, after going through this model, let us look at virtual learning experience. I think as leaders, our focus should be to use this time and the future time to create a learning experience for all the people. Therefore, I have included this concept. And people are uncomfortable to begin with because of these challenges. People are prone to distractions. People are less engaged. Engagement levels are also not visible to the person who is delivering it, even in this particular interaction as well. Redesigning of the materials and formats, because many times what we have created for a normal classroom or a normal environment, we just copy paste or create the same thing in virtual world as well. But that is, I think, suicidal if you do that, because people don't see it as a real application. There's no eye contact in that sense. There is no behavioral focus on behavioral change. Therefore, again, engagement is poor. People look at it as a passive learning experience. There is no opportunity to practice. There is very little engagement overall with the faculty. And last point, very interesting, is that I'm sure some of you on this webinar as well are looking at your emails or news or your, because social media is so prevalent that there will be a pop-up on your WhatsApp. So you will be looking at that. So this is typical challenges of distant learning, but how does one tackle it? So I'm going to share this virtual accountability model. This I have adapted it from Conferry. So look at this center, virtual accountability. There are 3 elements to this, and I would like you to focus on those 3. The first is, of course, the verbal part. So, but before we come to that, be aware that each of these 3 areas, that is verbal, the visual, and the kinesthetic accountability, all 3 accountabilities must be activated every minute. Otherwise, you will have the audience to sleeping. So what is verbal? Verbal is use a breakout groups, maintain high level of engagement, encourage people to speak up at a periodicity. Then if you look at visual accountability, the layout should be varied, use videos, but press the pause button frequently, ask feedback. Don't let the video run for the full duration. Maximize the use of diagrams, charts, don't use too much text. And kinesthetic is, again, using functionalities such as chatting, calling out people, polling. These are some ways one can use all the 3 accountabilities. And you as leaders, whether at Shoolini or at any of the companies who are participating here, be aware that this model is a very powerful way one can use virtual learning experiences. But just be aware also that you should not allow muting of lines. You should not use the platform very functionally to facilitate communication engagement. Make it short, probably 50%. It's a one-day program, make it a half-a-day program. And of course, you should mix up both virtual breakout groups and also individual tasks. So these are some ways we can manage our program in a virtual environment. To some extent, this is also true for meetings. But primarily, it's for learning environment that I have put my thoughts together. And these elements, restructuring, I'm going to keep it brief, but I'm going to laying off people is a very dangerous and sometimes counter productive to the company. But if you look at what Goldman Sachs has forecasted, they have forecasted a 50% higher annualized unemployment rate by middle of this year, as well as, of course, deep or sharp fall in GDP, much beyond what we saw in the last time we had this financial crisis. In India, losing your job may mean you cannot afford food, basic health care. That was also true in last time, but there was not a viral pandemic at that time. Today, another environmental difference is social media. Social media today is very different from what it was in 12 years ago, because what message which you convey gets viral in seconds. So beware of this because of the last point. Beware that employees who lose their job, this is based on a lot of research. By the way, at the end of this, my presentation, I have given you some of the sources of my research. So employees who lose their job in an involuntary layoff suffer greater pecuniary means financial, non-money consequences than employees who are fired for a particular cause. You see here. Why is it so? If you see, the employees feel that the organization has treated them unfairly and that they have no control on their own fate. We know that some of these negative emotions persist for even up till a decade. So the damage that you are creating is going to be a deep one, a long-lasting one. So beware of this. And the last aspect of this is layoffs typically produce, as we discussed, negative consequences. But organizations handle career transitions, but that is more important today than it ever was. And because re-employability chances are also much lower. The most effective career transition should become human-centric, not your own organizational-centric. And please remember this, again, I'm giving you some research-based statistic. Researchers have found that after 6 months of unemployment, the probability of finding a job falls to 12%. So today, if it is, my employability chances are say 90, but it will fall to 12 if I am not employed within 6 months of my being laid off. So, and this number gets even worse with time. So you as leaders must be aware of this. Second, include the creation of a long-term development plan that extends well past their immediate next job that they have, what you're planning for them. So this brings me to the last of the 5 elements that I started with, enabling people through change. So I will mainly focus on this slide. So coming back, focus on the critical. So if you are wanting people to be enabled in a crisis, you must focus on only those which are critical elements. And then you have these 5 elements that you have. Communicate. So this is a time unlike any other time. You need to, don't say that, okay, earlier I used to have once in a month communication with my people. That's not enough. Probably once in a week, maybe once in twice a week. So communicate is one mantra for enabling people. Understand the employees' challenges, acknowledge their experience. So many times the problem is not surfacing because people feel that their experiences with customer or with the market or with supplier or with the workers is discounted by the leadership. So please acknowledge that employees' experiences are very valid. Some of it is true in any COVID or no COVID. This is all true. But I feel the importance or the urgency and also the depth of all these 5 elements in the center is becomes more critical. The 4th element inside is recognize that informal interactions are happening. This is again true, very true in normal also. There are a lot of grapevine happening, but informal interactions deepen in crisis. And you as a leader must understand those type of interactions. Finally, give people a voice. Let people speak. Don't control them through your authority. The 3 elements outside is in terms of prioritizing safety. People must recognize that as a leader is giving priority to their safety. So they will then become enabled. Recognize that technology has its limitations because sometimes we forget this. And the below one is rethink about management of time. So many times, if it is food time and you are the cook in your house, please give time. Let the person come back after he or she has fed the family, and only then continue your meeting. So the last point here on the right is addressing the rewards. Addressing rewards means that you have employee performance, but quickly create reward system and ensure that people who did well are suitably recognized. So, ladies and gentlemen, that actually brings me to the end of my session. But only one last point I wanted to show you this slide, that fear is normal. And that is the starting point, phase 1. But you as a leader must lead the group away from the stage of fear to the stage of learning, and finally the stage of growth. Thank you. These are some of the references that I have used my presentation.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Saideep. This was absolutely spectacular. I can tell you, I am blushing and I've got goose pimples as I speak to you. You made 1 hour of serious talk insightful, entertaining, and the sort of quote unquote goose pimplish. Hats off to you. Thank you so much. The way you explained the concepts simply and so wonderfully, I think that's great. The litmus test always is, I say, my mother who's watching this webinar should be calling me, and she just pinged me and said, wow, wonderful. So you passed the litmus test, Saideep.
I passed the test, okay.
Absolutely wonderful. So lots of questions coming up. I think we've got 10 odd minutes with us. Why don't I sort of go into them? So I think the first set of questions are around this whole concept of empathy versus execution. What's the right balance? Poonam is asking that, in situations like these, we end up being more empathetic than what we normally are. So what's the right balance according to you, Saideep?
Yes. See, empathy, as people know, is wearing the other person's shoe. In a way, very crudely, that defines empathy. But wearing the other person's shoe, some people also are uncomfortable actually, because moment I wear your shoe and I know where it pinches, I feel morally obliged to do something about that. I must give you something, some alarm, some ointment, something to protect you. But empathetic understanding or empathy does not necessarily mean that you agree with the person. Empathy is really that you feel for the person, but you will explain your stand, and hopefully the other person also will be empathetic, or at least you must train so that he or she will also be looking at your viewpoint. And I think the balance is, I feel, fairness. If you are fair, ultimately, if you are fair in your dealings, you are fair in your approach, people don't mind it. Only if there is, people see that somebody has been favored more than me or other person. That is the key for all dissatisfaction to emanate and grow. So empathy is a starting point. Because much of the resistance to change reduces if you are empathetic. And people are not unreasonable. By and large, they know that things are bad today. Things are going to probably become worse tomorrow. So they are also managing something, their own businesses, their own families, their own life. So they are, I feel, quite reasonable in the end.
So, Saideep, lots of people will probably get laid off. Students, for example, who are graduating might not get jobs. We are in probably the century's worst pandemic, right? I mean, no one has ever planned for zero revenues. We probably planned for -20, -30, possibly -50, but we are now looking and staring at a zero revenue situation. So what's your advice to people who, for example, either get laid off or students who are not getting jobs? What's your advice to them?
I would say three approaches. First, in the short term, I think one must create a better network, keep as many people linked, because linking in with people, I'm not talking about LinkedIn as a site, but linking in with people is a key in such cases, because you never know which particular link will give you. Maybe the traditional links are failing. The placement office in Shoolini or in any college in IIM may not get you a job, but your forgotten link with whom you had once worked or once said hello or once met in a bus could be the person who can give you a break. So in the short run, I feel brushing up your network is one of the key elements. If that doesn't work in the medium term, I feel one must look at sharpening one's skills. So what else can I add value to myself so that I can be ready when the whole thing subsides. So what else I can, sharpening the saw, as you very well know, sharpening the saw means what else I can add value to myself. So I feel it is bad time. I know we were looking at salary to come in. Instead, I am forced to spend more money and learn myself new tools and techniques. But there are opportunities. There are many programs like MOOCs. IIMB has MOOCs, and the whole world has many. Harvard University has one. So all the Stanford has one. So all have MOOC programs which are available more or less free. You develop yourself, develop your skills, so that when the tide passes, then you are better prepared to face the world at that time.
Very well, sir.
Oh, these are wonderful tips. So Rohit has asked quite a few questions. I think there's Dr. Rohit Goel, and I'll just pick up one or two of them, Saideep. He's basically saying that stress levels are quite high during these situations. So how do you manage stress? That's one question. He's also asking a question which says, you need both internal and external advice in these type of situations. What's the right balance between getting external advice to listening to your own team members? Would you like to pick up these two questions, Hadi?
Yeah, sure. I think the first one, both are interesting questions. Maybe it can stretch, the answer can stretch, but I will give you a very brief reply. I think some well-known, how do you call it, responses to stress management is, of course, self. That is, do yoga, do deep breathing. So I will not go to that point yet. I will go to one slightly different dimension. I would like you to think of it as two concentric circles. The inner circle is the sphere of your influence. Outside circle is the sphere of control. So what is happening in our environment is the sphere of control, which is not under our control. We have no influence on that. So I feel we get stressed because we focus on the sphere of control rather than sphere of influence. So I would suggest that one way to look at it, I mean, very crude way, they used to say that, just lie back and enjoy it. I don't want to say that, but if you control it, just relax. Don't get stressed because that is something not under your control. And after some time, you will see a silver lining coming. And many of our fears, which we have in our back of our mind, much of it may not really take shape. So you know that about 90 fears I have, only maybe 2 or 3 are real dangers. The 87 or 88 of them were more mirages haunting me in the brain. So I feel focus on my sphere of influence and to a great extent ignore the sphere of control.
So, one last question before I hand it over to Arvind. Nilesh is asking that why do businesses have to lay off? Why can't they do unpaid sabbaticals or furloughs and employees just be off the rolls for a while, and then once the businesses are back to normal, they come back? Why is that not happening? Why are layoffs happening, Saideep?
It's basically business culture related. This because I'm looking at India-Japan Study Center, I have interacting more now with Japanese. And as you well know, this happens in Japan all the time. People are able to work with maybe 20-30% of your salary only. And sometimes they don't work at all. So it is a cultural aspect. So I think we need to build in a culture of that in a family orientation. In a family, you never cut off your son or a daughter or when there is a crisis. So everybody is fed something. If the cooking is not enough, we share whatever is there equally between us or like this. So I feel to a great extent, the question is very correct. It's the cultural aspect. And I feel we must develop an Indian way. So far, we have looked at the European or a Western way to Western approach to this. I feel the Indian approach needs to be developed.
I so agree with you, Nilesh. I think we need to definitely protect everyone. The challenge, I think, also becomes sometimes a little legal. our labor laws or our laws, the regulators have a very different approach. For example, some states are saying, you have to pay full salary, but no revenues are coming in. And I think that's a very, very difficult situation for everyone. So I think a great interaction. Arvind, for your last question before we say thanks to Saideep.
Saideep, it was truly illuminating, not illuminating, and great insight, like people are mostly saying. Apart from these aspects that we spoke about, skilling yourself, improving yourself, being able to take into your stride the kind of pressures that are being faced. Is there any, like you said, that you must keep a humor? So at times it becomes very, very difficult. I mean, but what are there any tips, and how do you cope up yourself in this, confinement and depressing environment that most of people with incomes not being very certain and a lot of uncertainty around?
Well, I don't think Saideep is a very humorous person. He looks very serious, but we'd love to hear this from Saideep, because you brought in humor into this. Arvind, you're breaking, so I'm going to take over somehow your network is not coming.
Okay. Saideep?
I could not fully get because your voice was.
So Saideep, what Arvind is asking is, you said that you use humor during difficult times, but how does one do that? Especially when times are very tough, it's difficult to see humor anyway. So how do you bring humor into difficult situations?
Okay. The humor part, I think, as I mentioned, the humor is to ability to laugh at oneself. So many people are shy of doing that. And because when you are leading a group, people need to, they look at you as that you are at a height. So if you can show your vulnerability, people will become more amenable. That is, you show that I made a mistake. I made a goof up, not a mistake. I made a goof up. And if you are able to laugh at that, then people will say, oh, he is not, dean of a university or a vice chancellor of a university, but he is also a human. So they will start sharing their issues or problems.
Great, thank you so much. Yes.
Saideep, what wonderful tips. Before we close, and we've already sort of exceeded 7 minutes. 1 minute of last tips, and we then say thank you to you.
Guru Gyan.
1 minute. Okay, I think the key to a management of any crisis, I feel, is to just focus on what one can change. Those 3 mantras which talk about give me the prayer, the courage to change things, the patience to accept things, courage to change things that I can, the patience to accept things that I cannot, and finally, the wisdom to know the difference between the two. I think if one has these 3 things, courage, patience, and wisdom, I think we will conquer this problem very easily.
I'm sure we will, Saideep, especially we've got leaders like you in this country. Thank you very much. What a stimulating talk, I would say. We have to get you back. Hopefully you'll oblige. But once again, thank you, participants. Thank you, Arvind, for being a wonderful host.
Thank you.
And we'll be back once again tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be moving from the serious topic of leadership to music. And we'll be going into the history of music with our very dear friend Pawan Jha. He'll take us through R.D. Burman and how the latest music directors have thought about building music. See you again 11:30 tomorrow, everyone, on the Yogananda Guru series. And Saideep, once again, thank you.
Thank you.
I have to
Saideep.
make you my guru. I can say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wish
Thank
you
very
all
much.
a great day and be safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, Saideep.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.